Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of video games. We cover all kinds from the mainstream to the indie, so I hope you enjoy your stay, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. When the Warrior of Light beat Habrea in the Ultima weapon, she hadn't taken the time to grab the heart of Sabik. Granted, she had only heard the Ascian mention it, plus it wasn't like there was time anyway, so she hadn't seen it since that day. Habrea, the Ascian not the Ancient, wasn't dead, so he very likely took the heart with him. A good while later, he was killed in the Aetherochemical Research Facility by Thornton, and that just so happens to be the exact place where Claudien went missing. The professor had been following the ethereal signature of something that was similar to the memory crystal that he'd found, which was likely the heart. Since Athena had reappeared not long after that, it's safe to say that he had something to do with her resurrection, but that still leaves the question of why. On top of that, even though Athena's a memory made flesh like Habrea and Athenius, she's just as powerful as she was when she had a physical body, or at least close to it, which means she must have found a vessel that was capable of containing her power. But with all of the people of the source being sundered fragments of what they used to be, that shouldn't have been possible. Possible or not, she's done it, and if Themis is to be believed, she's very close to making that body into a god. The thing is, the only body that should have been able to hold the power that she needed was Athenius, and his body would definitely have decayed a long time ago, so the mystery of what vessel she could be using won't be solved right now. Not before you fight Themis. Athenius doesn't think the fight will be easy, but he does think that if you win, you may be able to break Themis from Athena's control. If you weaken him enough, it should work, but he won't remain solid for long once his essence starts to dissipate, so you'll have to ask your questions quickly. Granted, you also have to survive the fight, because if anyone remembers the last time you faced off against the Littlebus, you would know that survival's not exactly guaranteed. Themis doesn't take on the form of the first Warrior of Light like his Ascian form did, but what he turns into is far harder to deal with. The Warrior of Light still manages to pull off a victory, which causes Themis to transform back. With his defeat, Athena's hold on his mind breaks and he goes back to normal. He was well aware of the fact that Athena's magic could make her victims focus solely on their greatest desire and ignore everything else, but he hadn't thought that the thing that he wanted most was to test himself against you. Now that he's done his part, Athena releases him so he'll fade away, but the Warrior of Light uses her own ether to hold Themis together for a little bit longer. At least for long enough for him to do his job as emissary and judge Athena for her actions, and see that she's punished for them. You'll have to do the punishing part, of course, but he does have some information to share with your group that can help, so the two of you go back to meet up with Habrea and Athenius so you can get ready for your showdown with Athena. The vessel that Athena has is actually Claudien, which under normal circumstances wouldn't work. But Claudien turned out to be the perfect host, which let Athena put her memories into his body while his soul was still intact, and that let her resurrect herself in full as opposed to just being a living memory like Themis and the others. But since Claudien is a sundered being, Athena hasn't been able to put her full power into him, which is why she set her sights on you. Even sundered, the Warrior of Light is stronger than most of the ancients, and Athena figures that if she could add those properties to Claudien's body, she would have a vessel strong enough for her purposes. You have to stop her, obviously, but doing that won't necessarily mean you have to kill Claudien. Athena taking over his soul didn't destroy it. He just doesn't know that he's being controlled at all, so if you can wake him up, he should be able to push Athena out of his body. Athenius doesn't understand why Claudien's body worked as Athena's vessel at all, but it should be pretty obvious by now. Claudien is a shard of Athenius, the same way that the Warrior of Light is a shard of Azem. Themis didn't see Claudien, but he did hear Athena call him Athenius, so that pretty much proves it. Habrea had already figured that out because of course he did, but since Themis confirmed it, Habrea thinks he knows how to save the man. The first thing that has to be done is the obvious, and that's beat the crap out of Athena so she can end up in the same weakened state as Themis. Granted, she has way more power than he had, and since you're the only one who can even fight her, you'll have to do it alone. After you do that, Habrea has a plan that he won't tell anyone about because he's Habrea. Well, that's part of it. The other reason he won't tell is because he doesn't want you thinking about anything other than fighting Athena. She's too strong for you to fight her and worry about Claudien's safety, which makes sense. Erythonius already has a lot on his mind too. Mainly he's wondering if his mother had never found that aura site, would she have actually been a loving parent and wife? La Habrea's wondered the same thing too, but there's no point in worrying about it since there's no way to know for sure. Since there's no point in delaying the inevitable any longer, you head off to fight Athena. A lot of people claim to be a god, and usually they're all talk. Athena isn't one of those. She's managed to build up real power. Unfortunately for her, she's not the first god the Warrior of Light has had to tangle with, and as per usual, she overpowers the god-to-be. Once Athena's back in her more manageable form, Erythonius wants to know what was the point of all of this. What was she really trying to achieve? La Habrea doesn't really care. The woman worked against the star, and for that she needs to die for good this time. That may be true, but Erythonius still wants to know why his mother abandoned her family for a mad quest. Athena's surprised that her son actually grew into somebody who would question why she would do anything instead of just going along with whatever she decided. But since he asked, she's willing to answer. Granted, her answer is pretty anticlimactic. She had a theory and she wanted to prove it. Simple as that. She came to the conclusion that any real god would see her race as imperfect and would spend all of their time finding ways to remove their flaws and build a better being. Athena figured that the best way to help the star was to find a way to upgrade her people into the perfect stewards for the planet. And to do that, she needed the power to create souls, and she was perfectly fine with killing all of the imperfect life on Etheris to get it. She honestly sounds like Emmett Selk, but without the actual motivation. He saw the sundered beings as imperfect and was willing to kill them all to restore the far superior ancients. Athena just came up with the idea that her people could be better and she could make them better if she had the power to create her own race. She claims that what she's doing is no different from what her people did all the time when they created new things and wiped out the old ones. The problem with that comparison is she didn't make the ancients in the first place, so since she didn't give them life, she doesn't have the right to decide that they don't need it anymore. While the aura site made her go over the edge, it didn't give Athena these ideas, no different from when someone gets drunk and does something that they regret. They always had it in them to do whatever it is that they did, they just had the good sense not to. The alcohol suppresses that good sense, and the aura site did that to Athena. The woman actually takes offense at the fact that Erythonius thinks he has the right to judge her, when he only existed to be a vessel for her power. She figures that his rebellious streak must have come from the fact that she left him with the soul. The woman got pregnant with him for the sole purpose of modifying his body so it would be able to handle her essence when she took it over. She modified his mind so he would adore her and follow her commands no matter what. But she made a few mistakes on that part. His lack of magical ability, all of his failures as a person, were all things that Athena made sure would happen as part of her plans, which honestly makes her quite possibly the single most evil person in Final Fantasy XIV. Valens was a child-murdering dick, but it takes a special kind of crazy to intentionally make your own child suffer up until the very day that you decide to kill them and have that be your plan before they're even born. Obviously, getting that type of information hits Erythonius pretty hard, but he handles it pretty well, and he lets his mother know that now that he knows what she wants, he'll make sure she never becomes a god. Athena takes that in stride and changes her plan. If she can't become the god of Etheris, then the star doesn't need to exist at all. While you were all talking, she had been building up ether, and she turns it all into a spirit bomb that she's going to use to destroy the ethereal sea, which would wipe out all life on the planet. There's pretty much nothing that the Warrior of Light can do to stop her, but La Habrea had told Erythonius before the fight even started that he was the key to beating his mother. While he is only a memory, his soul is currently in the body that Athena is using, something she clearly hadn't thought about when she pulled her son's memories out of that crystal. He can merge with his shard and wake him up. That way Claudien can push Athena out of his body, stop her attack, and make her just as powerless as any other memory until she fades away for good. He probably won't survive the encounter, and while some people would say that he's just a memory so it doesn't matter, he's alive, and self-preservation instincts alone make sacrificing yourself difficult. But the fact that La Habrea says that he's proud of him probably made the decision easier. Athena tries to command him not to, but after what she told him, she would have done better not saying anything at all. Fortunately for you and the rest of the world, Erythonius separates Athena from Claudien, causing her to lose all of her power. But that also causes Pandaemonium to start to collapse. La Habrea and Themis use the little bit of power that they have to get you and Claudien out of there, while Athena dies, but not before she solidifies her place as Mother of the Year by using her last words to tell Erythonius just how useless he is. The Warrior of Light and the others make it back outside just in time to watch Pandaemonium vanish. All that's left to do now is wait for Claudien to wake up. While you're waiting, La Habrea has something that he wants to ask you about. He hadn't missed Gigi's mentioning of the Ascian named La Habrea when she was telling him about everything that happened to get them to that point in history. She claimed that him and that particular Ascian weren't the same person, but the fact that he had used the heart of Sabik to do some not so nice stuff has him wondering. Since you met and fought the Ascian, he wants to know if that's who he'll become. The fact that telling him won't affect time since he's just a memory in the present means there's really no harm in it. But since the two of them are completely different personality-wise, the Warrior of Light isn't certain whether this La Habrea or his successor becomes the body-snatching psycho that we all hate. The Ascians also switch bodies a lot, so that also makes it kind of rough to know their real identity. And after hearing some of the things that the Ascian did, La Habrea does have a hard time seeing himself becoming that. But after thinking about it, he admits that under the right circumstances, he probably would do pretty much anything if it meant fulfilling his duty to the star. That includes using the heart of Sabik and going down the same path that Athena had, which means it's safe to say that he is in fact the La Habrea that you fought. While you chat, Claudien finally wakes up and he remembers bits and pieces of what happened, including seeing you fight Athena. He has Erythonius' memories too, and he wants to tell La Habrea how his son felt about him, but hearing the words from a sundered piece of his son is not the same, so he'd rather not, especially since he's technically the enemy of every living thing on the source. Claudien doesn't see it that way. The Ascian La Habrea is their enemy, but the La Habrea of the Convocation is an entirely different person, one who helped save them all. Being the logical man that he is, La Habrea thinks Claudien's an idiot for thinking that, but he's not going to argue the point. He does think that you still have one thing left to learn from Pandaemonium, and that is who was it that started all of this by setting Hephaestus free in the first place. That means you'll need to take one more trip to the past. He does warn you not to tell him anything about what happened to Athena. He doesn't think he'll change what he does, but you never know. With that said, he finally fades away. Themis feels like he's gonna fade away soon too, but he thinks he can stick around so he can hear what you learned from the past. Technically, he already knows what you're gonna find out since he's a memory of Themis from after you went back, but he wants to hear what you think about the news. So you head back into the past for what needs to be the last time, because time travel is always making new plot holes and paradoxes that are never fixed as smoothly as people think. When you get back to Pandaemonium in the past, La Habrea and the others are all surprised to see you since they didn't think you had a reason to come back there at all. When you tell them what you want, La Habrea isn't that eager to share any information with you, but Themis thinks that you do deserve a few answers since you did help fix the situation. After you left, Themis had given control of Pandaemonium back to La Habrea, and using some of Athena's research, they managed to restore Hegemone's mind and body. There's still a lot more prisons to fix and key wards to replace, but they're making progress. But before they can get the place back up and running, La Habrea has something that he needs to do, and he's willing to let you watch as long as you don't interfere. It involves Hegemony. He called her to meet with him because after all of the deaths, she's now the highest ranking key ward. That means she needs to know the full details about what it took for La Habrea to separate himself from Hephaestus. He fractured his soul to do it, and that cost him a lot of his power. He doesn't have the strength in his present state to use the magic that Hephaestus had used to control Pandemonium's warders, or to free them from that control. Hephaestus had left behind some research that said to transform a vessel into one of Athena's Amythoi, you had to have complete control over the victim's mind. The magic that gave that control got it by amplifying the victim's strongest emotions, which in the case of Hesperos and Aegisthus was their respect for La Habrea. That let Hephaestus throw Pandemonium into chaos and take it over. But he couldn't have done that until someone set him free. That means someone was already under Athena's control before any of this started. It was the only way for the woman to guarantee that even after her death, her plans would get put into motion. And considering the fact that Hegemony had worked in Pandemonium under Athena herself, her loyalty was to her and Pandemonium, not to La Habrea. The woman tries to explain herself, but La Habrea binds her because he knows that Athena messed with her mind. But as he is, he doesn't have the power to undo it, so he decides that if he's going to have the power to truly serve the star, he has to repair his soul and merge with Hephaestus, bringing with it all of the power and painful memories that he had tried to banish. With his powers restored, he easily burns Athena's mind control out of Hegemony. That doesn't necessarily mean that she likes La Habrea, but he doesn't need his people to like him as long as they do their job, and he thinks Hegemony will be the perfect person to oversee Pandemonium from now on. She is more than willing to do the job while he works to safeguard the star. As long as that remains his goal, Themis won't have to step in and put him back in his place, something he seems confident that he could do even with La Habrea at full power again. Now that he knows why his father is the way he is, Erythonius plans on working with him on his mission so they can be a family. The two of you, however, are not friends. So with this little excursion over, La Habrea tells you that it's time for the two of you to part ways and walk your separate paths. He says that like he knows where the two of you will end up in the future, even though he shouldn't. But like I said before, time travel is always a problem. With that done, you head back to your own time to talk to Claudien and future Themis. While you were gone, Themis let Claudien know everything that happened while Athena had Orochimaru'd his body. And that little bit of info let him understand that the ethereal signature that he had sensed in Aziz La had been Athena trying to find her vessel. But it hadn't started when he first found the memory crystal. The thing should have activated as soon as he touched it, since he's Erythonius and it held his memories. But Themis figures that the changes brought about by the sundering must have made it take longer to resonate with the fractured soul of the ancient. But once he did get attuned to the crystal, that let Athena start to take him over, so he was already under her control before he even left to go to Aziz La. All of that is over now, but with his mind clear, Claudien can sense another memory stored inside of the crystal, and he hopes it holds the answers to why La Habrea and Erythonius had created the thing. Since he has Erythonius' memories, Claudien knows how to activate the crystal, so he turns it on and you all see the moment Erythonius put his final memory into it. The final days had started and things had started to go crazy with their creation magic, but La Habrea and the Convocation had gotten started on the plan to summon Zodiark. Themis had already agreed to become Zodiark's heart, but the one thing that the Convocation seemed to have forgotten about in the chaos was Pandaemonium and the dangerous creatures that it held. Even if they stopped the final days, if the chaos caused the cells of Pandaemonium to open and those creatures were allowed to run free, the final days stopping wouldn't have saved the world, it would have just ended in a different way. So Erythonius decided to go against the Convocation and not add his strength to Zodiark. Instead, he would stand guard over Pandaemonium alone to make sure that the creatures wouldn't get out. But he didn't know if he would die during the final days, so he decided to send the crystal with his and La Habrea's memories into the underworld, with a spell on it that would make it be drawn to his essence, so even if he died and got reborn, the crystal would remind him that he needed to get back to Pandaemonium. And if he couldn't make it back, he hoped that it'll find someone like the Warrior of Light to help with whatever problems popped up. And this is why I hate time travel. So Erythonius sent the stone into the ethereal sea because he didn't know if he would die and be reborn during the final days. If he did, the stone would find him, jumpstart his memories, and have him make a beeline for Pandaemonium. That part makes sense. Him mentioning you doesn't, because he shouldn't have known you at the time that he made the stone due to the fact that he only met you because he sent the stone and Claudien found it, which prompted you to go back in time to start this story. Time travel shenanigans aside, Claudien's happy to finally know how all of this started, but there is one more thing that will likely be a problem later. The heart of Sabik survived, and it was in Claudien's pocket. At least it doesn't have Athena's memories in it anymore, but it's still a powerful piece of auracite that Claudien plans on studying. He heads off to do just that, leaving you alone with Themis, who has one last thing to tell you. He was pulled from the ethereal sea, and he has memories of your fight at the top of the Crystal Tower and of him sending you to the past. He doesn't know exactly why he sent you back, but he thinks he had seen bits and pieces of your trip through Pandaemonium together. He didn't see how that journey went, but he saw you in Elpis, so he knew that he had to send you there. In other words, he saw you there because he sent you there, so he knew that he had to send you there. After Themis gives you a migraine trying to explain these shenanigans, he fades away into the ethereal sea, and the Warrior of Light heads off to save the world from whatever crisis pops up next. This concludes the story of Pandaemonium. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, donate if you can, and I'll see you guys next time.